Have you noticed how conspiracy theories usually tend to postulate invisible man? This is very interesting. Most conspiracy theories assume that there is somebody who is in charge, somebody who has intentions, evil intentions, somebody who stands above everything, is extremely powerful. But that someone is not visible. We don't know that someone. But we know they are there. It's something that we often hear to be identified with the term they. When we're talking about conspiracy theories, usually the term they is being used, and it's not very clear what the they means. And when you start probing and poking and asking for examples for what you identify with they, people then at the end of the day usually come up with the idea that there is a group of hidden people, hidden subjects who conspire together and control everything else. Now, the function of such an idea within conspiracy theories might be that since the phenomenon itself is not visible, they are not visible, there is no way of proving you wrong. If you're talking about something which is visible, you can take the phenomenon and compare your claims about the phenomenon with the reality of the phenomenon. But when it's something that's invisible and untouchable, you can always move the goalpost. So you can always say, well, these are the signs that they exist and that they are in control. And once you have shown that those signs are either misinterpretations or willfully created false flags, you can always move the goalpost and say, well, no, but there are the actual signs that they exist. Now, with conspiracy theories, I think the function might be pretty obvious of this strategy. It's basically a strategy where you always win. If you assume a they behind the scenes, you will always win an argument because there's absolutely no way of you being proven wrong. You can take any kind of evidence as evidence for them existing. You can always turn it around and contextualize it in a different way as to always be right, no matter what the real world actually shows, and no matter the facts in the real world. So in the realm of conspiracy thinking, I think the function of this trope is pretty obvious. But the fascinating thing is that even in circles which I would not consider to be conspiratorial in nature, like the liminal spaces where people are experimenting with new ways of social organization, new ways of thinking about personal identity and how to relate to others and to nature, I see a quasi-conspiratorial they quite a lot. And not in the sense that some kind of elite is supposed to control the world and to manipulate it to get what it wants, but in the sense that we're looking back at times when we thought things were better. People were not facing, for example, the meaning crisis. People had something like functioning social relationships, whatever you want to take here as an example. And that there's always the assumption that in some kind of hidden way, something that's a mystery, and we have to figure out how they did it or what exactly they did. But miraculously, somehow people got things right in the past, for example, or they get it right in different cultures from our own culture. And this is very similar to the notion of they, not in the sense that there is a conspiracy of people who are hiding themselves from view, but in the sense that there is something hidden from view which magically makes the past better than the present, or magically makes the other culture better than your own culture because you know about the difficulties and you know about the limitations of your own culture. Yet, however, there is something misunderstood or not understood in the other culture, that we now have to bring into the picture as a savior for our present day problems. And this is, I'm really sorry to say, I think very, very close to conspiratorial thinking as well. At the end of the day, I think the structure is very similar, because you're basically in both cases denying the obvious. When we're talking about normal conspiracy theories, the reality of it is, and it's funny, I just recently heard Russian propagandists really, really hate on the idea of a hidden elite. And what they were saying was, no, this is bogus, right? This is, we don't believe in this conspiratorial stuff. Why? Because we know those who are responsible. They hold official positions, and we want those people to be responsible. We want them to be actually held to account for what decisions they have been making. So it is interesting how they themselves insist, and I'm talking here about people who otherwise spread conspiratorial thinking because it's in their own interest. They don't like this element of conspiratorial thinking in this context, not in the sense that, of course, they like that people start hating on their own government and start to fall apart and fragment into small groups who can't stand each other. They like that. But the aspect that they really don't like is the idea that you can't hold somebody to be responsible for actions, because those who are responsible are invisible. We can't know who they are. And this is relatively trivial stuff and relatively boring. But for me, the interesting part is that the circles that I really had the highest hopes in a way, are thinking in similar terms, where the idea is that the savior, the thing that will fix our problems and the big issues that we're facing today, is kind of hidden. It's in the background. It's something that has to be uncovered, and it has to be something for us new. If it wasn't new, we would already have done it, right? And it can't be plain obvious. It can't be something that we kind of already know. But that's the reality of it, I think. In many situations, the solution is plain obvious, or how things work is plain in the open. It's not a big mystery. It's not something that's hidden consciously from view and nobody has ever known about it and is supposed to ever know about it. But the reality of reality is just, in many cases, it's just very messy. It's very, very trivial. And oftentimes the solutions for problems are much less spectacular than we want them out to be. One example is one way of solving the meaning crisis is war. That's it. It's not some hidden, mysterious way of interacting with other people. It's not some kind of special ritual that people performed back in the day and they knew it and nobody else knows it today. It's not some special way of acting out subjectivity that we just kind of weirdly lost and forgot. I mean, if it was that special, if it was that good, you would expect that the person capable of it will be able to teach it to somebody else. This is usually the case. If you have something that important to show, you will find somebody to listen to you and to learn from you and to pass it on from generation to generation. It's very weird if something that is extremely valuable and gives purpose to an entire culture is just suddenly lost and nobody can do it anymore, right? Because apparently no child felt like it's worthy of paying attention to. Apparently they were incapable of educating their children in such a way as to pass on what they have learned, and is so deeply relevant for generations to come. The reality of it is, in many cases, the solutions and the actors in the political sphere who are responsible are right in front of our faces. We see them, and the actions are nothing special. The decisions are nothing special. The decisions are oftentimes not even hidden at all. You can access them. You can see who said what and how they responded to somebody else. And very similarly, I believe, it is with human social organization. Many of the things that solved problems in the past might be so trivial we're really ashamed to admit it. Like war being one key element for dealing with human disorientation and loss of identity. When you are in a war situation, you will find your identity pretty soon, whether you like it or not. And I think this gives a very different flavor to many of these hopeful stories about how we can reorganize societies in new different ways, which is that we might be doing things fundamentally wrong by simply being very ideological about what works and what doesn't, because I feel we seem very certain to know what works and what doesn't work. And we seem to have a sense for understanding social phenomena, but I believe we have no clue. I believe we can't even see the most trivial things that are in front of our faces when it comes to subjectivity and how subjectivity operates in this world. And this is something that I've never really understood. But if you think about it, the things that people in past generations just took for granted, they just did them without knowing why to do them. They just did them. It was all part of a tradition. I'm kind of part of the first generation in human history where we were raised to always ask the question, why? Why should I do this? And oftentimes, we have never been given a meaningful answer. And if there was no meaningful answer, we assumed you don't do it. You just don't if you don't have a good reason to do something. And this starts from stuff like that's really obvious, like spanking your children. Well, you can't be really given good reasons for spanking your children. In the past, it was just done. People just did it. I was raised in a generation where you have to basically question everything, from how you speak to other people, how you start interactions with other people, to how you design your life, what's worthy of desiring in the first place. Like, well, is it worthy of desiring having a family? Is it worthy of desiring having a home? All of those things, or a profession, or standing out in your profession. Is it worthy to listen to those others and elderly people around you? In my generation, everything was put in question, and I have the impression that instead of figuring things out better and knowing better what to do in life and what not, oftentimes we ended up not doing things that were essential to just be done without asking these questions and getting nowhere by just asking the questions. And in the liminal spaces, I see a similar trend. The idea that we can think ourselves into understanding how social dynamics operate and what makes people, function in a not so reductionistic way within social contexts. And I don't think we do. And therefore the suggestions that we're making are oftentimes themselves deeply ideological. They see the phenomenon from only one possible perspective, and particularly the perspective of hope that only if you did this way, everything will be fine, which is a problematic trend. And oftentimes we figure out that things were not fine within such communities until it's too late. People suddenly realize that the positive experience and positive feeling of hope and moving forward that they have was not the result of things being so great, but was rather the result of being hopeful in the first place and kind of waiting for the Messiah to come and to release you, which is like usually something that's associated with religious thinking and with religious expectations. And they have almost religious expectations in some of the alternative communities for a new way of thinking about the world that is supposedly to set everybody free. And overlooking at the very same time that some of the dynamics that hold people together and bring people apart are really, really old And they don't need to be understood on an intellectual level, but they can be acted out immediately. And most of those actions are just not very pleasant.